we're going to be going over break-even and how to calculate that. When it comes to planning, managers need to understand what are their costs, what is it that we can charge, what kind of profits that we need to make, this sort of thing. And determining your break-even point, in other words, the point of sales and costs where profit is zero, you're not making anything, but you're not losing anything either, is very important. That can help you determine what is it that we need to charge for our products. What do we need to do as far as our costs are concerned? And in determining your sales price, you have to think about the competition, the quality of your product, things like this. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the idea of break-even and how do we calculate what that is, and then also, so if we want to make a certain amount of money, what do we need to charge, how much do we need to make, this sort of thing. This is the chart from the back of the book where it's talking about the planning aspect and then also break-even and how to go about doing it. What you start with is your fixed costs. Your fixed costs are things that you're going to have to pay no matter what you do. Whether you produce something, whether you produce nothing, you're going to have to pay these fixed costs. That's things like the mortgage on the property, the administrative salaries. These are things that you're going to have to pay no matter what you produce, zero or millions. So you have your fixed costs. Then you have your variable costs. Variable costs are things where you have to pay for that for every unit that you make of your product. So you make a product, it's going to cost you a certain amount as far as materials, as far as the electricity to run the machines for that product, things like this. You take your fixed costs and your variable costs, and then depending on what your sales price is, it will tell you how many do we have to make in order to break even. In other words, there's no profit, but you're not losing money either. Now, in the chart at the back of the book, it's actually talking about making shirts. All right? So, let's see how to go about doing this. The formula that you use for break-even is figuring out how many units you need to have, or how many units you need to make in order to have zero profit, zero loss. You take your fixed costs and divide that by your selling price per unit minus your variable cost per unit. Now that's called your contribution margin. In this case, for the shirts that we're looking at here, in the example in the book, our fixed costs are $600,000. If you look at the chart here, here's your $600,000. The selling price per unit is $60. Every time we sell a shirt, we sell it for $60. Expensive shirts. It costs us $40 for every shirt that we make. So what we do is we take our fixed costs, divide that by that contribution margin, in other words, the selling price minus the variable cost per unit, which is $20. So your $600,000 divided by the $20 gives you 30,000 units. If you take your 30,000 units, multiply that by your selling price, you're looking at 1.8 million in sales. If you look at the chart, looking at this, if we produce 30,000 at that $60, we're making 1.8 million in sales. So if we make and sell 30,000 at $60, we're not going to lose anything, but we're not going to make anything either. Now, let's say that there's a certain amount of profit that you want to make. How do you figure that? In this case, we have our fixed cost of $600,000, price of selling it $60 per unit, price to make it $40, and let's say that we want $400,000 in profit. What we do is we take our fixed costs and add the profit to it. That's the total amount of dollars that you want to have coming in as far as your fixed cost and then the profit. Then divide that by that contribution margin, your selling price per unit minus your variable cost. So what you get is your $600,000 plus the $400,000, which gives you $1 million. And you divide that by the selling price per unit minus the cost per unit, which is $20. So your $1 million divided by $20 gives you 50,000 units. And if you take that 50,000 times the $60, what you're getting is $3 million in total sales. If you look at the chart, at 50,000 units produced, we're covering our fixed costs, here's our variable costs, and we'll have the profit, and we're looking at $3 million in sales. So that's how you determine your break even, and then also break even plus a profit. Now, let's make it a little bit different. Now we're going to have to break out the algebra on this and review the algebraic approach to how do we figure this. In this case, let's say that we're going to produce 30,000 units. And we want to know, so what should we charge for each of our units if we want to just break even? See, that will tell you, okay, we know what the competition is doing, we know what it is that we can do, so what do we need to charge to just break even? We're not going to lose anything, but we're not making anything either. So in this case, again, we have $600,000 for our fixed costs. We don't know what the price is that we need to charge so that we can make and sell 30,000 and sell it. It costs us $40 per unit, and how are we going to break even? So the way we figure that, what are the things we know? We know what it is we're going to produce. In this case, 30,000 units. We know what our fixed costs are. That's 600,000. And we know what our cost per unit is. So how much do we need to charge? So that's how you set this up as far as, all right, so what is it that's known? What is it that's unknown? In this case, what we want to do is solve for X. So how do we solve for X? Anytime you have something that's in the denominator like this, what you do is you multiply that by that denominator on each side. So in other words, on each side, remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side also. So in this case, we're going to multiply both sides by x minus 40. So here it is over here on this side. To get rid of it, here it is on this side. Well, when we set it up like this, these cross out. So what we're going to wind up with is just the 600,000. So we have the 30,000 times the x minus 40 over here. So what we have to do now is multiply this number times this and multiply this number times this. What that gives us is 30,000x, okay, that's the 30,000 times the x, minus, there's the minus right there, 30,000 times the 40, that's 1.2 million. So now we have it set up where we're saying, okay, 30,000x minus 1.2 million equals the 600,000. But we still need to get x over here. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to add to each side 1.2 million. When we add 1.2 million to each side, see, this is minus 1.2 million, so now we're going to add 1.2 million, that becomes 0. So all we have left over here is 30,000x. We add 1.2 million to the 600,000, we get 1.8 million. So now what we need to do is solve for x, and that means we divide each side by 30,000. So we divide this side by 30,000, divide this side by 30,000. 30,000x divided by 30,000 is just x. 30,000, the 1.8 million divided by 30,000 gives you 60. So if we have the question of, all right, so if we make this number, what do we need to charge so we can at least break even? In this case, it's 60. All of this is a part of the decision-making process that managers need to go through in determining what is it we want to produce, how much are we going to charge for it, what are our costs, and then you can start asking questions, okay, so what can we do to reduce our costs? What kind of profit levels would we get if we did X amount? So these are some of the questions that needed to be asked in the planning that's necessary for managers. If you have questions, please give me a shout.